The first time I saw that clip, it was just like that, no audio, and I was thinking, why in the world would a plane be banking that much? It made no sense. So then I had to dig around the internet to find the full clip. Here it is.
This is beautiful scene. Wow.
Aircraft has a range of up to 8,500 nautical miles, typical load of 525 passengers.
Such a small turn.
So far, the A380 program has won firm orders for 253 aircraft from 19 airlines, and every day there are around 100 commercial A380 flights. And it takes a fleet to carry 1 million passengers each month. On the scheduled flight, and that's everything to the group. So why?
Yeah, ये turn कितने प्यारे. Yeah. Like such a small turn. Can you see?
Yes, I can see. It's literally the only thing probably everybody on the ground is looking at is the massive plane in the sky flying around in circles. But there was something interesting that happened, and that's when the engine started to slow down as the plane got level. Listen here to the engines.
3 aircraft from 19 airlines, and every day there are around 100 commercial A380 flights.
When a plane starts to do a steep turn like this, it's not something that you're ever going to see as a passenger on a passenger plane because typically you're restricted to a 30 degrees of bank. You're not going to see a normal passenger plane while you're riding on it do anything crazy like this unless it's for some unknown crazy circumstance. But the autopilot's never going to do it, and the pilots typically won't do it because the plane will yell at us if we do it that way. But when you do that, the wings stop generating the lift to keep the plane away from the ground. And so what has to happen is the pilots have to add additional power. But you heard the power start to come back because as they brought the wings level, if they had left that level of power in, the plane would have started to climb away from the ground. And obviously they're trying to be low to the ground so people can see it do its tight turns. So it just got level, you heard the engines pull back here, and as they're flying level, they're going to have to add power to compensate for this steep bank that's coming up. Listen to this. There really isn't a lot to break down this video. They're obviously at some type of an air show with Airbus, and those are probably their test pilots. They're not going to let normal airline pilots like me do things like that. And I'm guessing they inhibited all the cautions and alarms and things like that because if a typical airline pilot were to do that, the plane would, one, narc us out, and they would report it to our airline. Hey, Kelsey's flying again. Look, he's at a 70 degree or 80 degree bank angles. He's flying around with freight or passengers, so I'm going to be in a lot of trouble for that. And the plane is going to start screaming at you. So you may remember sometimes when I'm in training, we do a maneuver called a steep turn where we take the plane at a very steep bank angle, and there's this kind of fine limit. If you go a little bit too far, the plane will scream bank angle at you, and it's way past the 30-degree point. So the pilots do train for that, and that's more just to improve our basic flying skills, but that's not something that you're ever going to see as a passenger. This is just an air show, and it's not anything crazy. Like when I first saw it with the no audio, I was thinking like, uh-oh, what is this happening here? Okay, before I even tell you why this video clip is even here, I'm just going to put up a picture here. It's about something else, but it also has why this video clip is even here. So this picture here has something else I know some of you are going to ask about, but it also shows the reason why this clip is here at all. So I'll let you think about that for a second while we talk about this cloud that's forming on the front of the wing, because I know some of you are going to ask me about it. Really, the only time that you're going to see something like that is when there's moisture in the air. And basically, here's what's happening. The wing on the upper part of the wing has this curvature, so when the air hits it, the wing starts to move that air around, and when it moves that air around, it can cool it. When it cools it and there's a lot of moisture in the air, it will create like a water vapor. And that water vapor is like that cloud that you see that's forming there. Sometimes you can see it if you're sitting near the wing and you're looking out the window, you will see that water vapor and that cloud. Just know that your pilots aren't up there doing some crazy Top Gun maneuver, even though we wish that we were. They're not doing that. It's just there's a lot of moisture in the air, and so when that air starts to hit it and cool, it creates a water vapor that looks like a cloud. Sometimes you'll see it with fighter pilots when they're flying around, so that's why I think sometimes people associate it with like a fighter plane, but it's really just a water vapor, and if you see that, there's really no reason to be concerned. As you can see here, it's very wet outside. There's a lot of moisture in the air, and obviously your plane needs to be flying fast enough to actually cause this air to cool down enough and form these cloud-looking things here. So if that same A340 pilot was doing that exact same thing that he was doing here in Las Vegas in the middle of summer, there would be no clouds forming there. Has to have moisture in the air. That's the most important thing. So now that we've talked about that, let's talk about why they're here if you haven't figured it out already. Most of you know this is an A340. If you aren't familiar with the easiest way to identify this plane, it has 4 engines and it's only one level. That's the easiest way. Some people on TikTok have called it a quadjet, but don't ever call it a quadjet. Nobody calls it a quadjet. These planes are just not fuel efficient anymore for passengers, so they're not going to see many of these flying passengers around. But as I freeze it here, you will notice something that this plane doesn't have, and it's that they don't have their flaps out. This is what it should actually look like here. Those flaps are things that are going out the back of the wing or sometimes off the front of the wing, or you'll hear them moving when you're getting ready to land. You hear that kind of winding noise. Those flaps basically change the shape of the wing, make the wing bigger, and allow the plane to fly slower. And you want your plane to be able to fly slow when it's doing its takeoff and landing, because you don't want to have a 40-mile long runway to do your takeoffs and landings, and you don't want to have the planes going crazy super fast to get up in the air. So they came up with this strategy of being able to change the shape of the wing and make it so the plane can fly slower, so it can do a slower takeoff and a slower landing. So since the flaps are not out, this pilot is maybe going 30 to 40 knots faster than they normally would, and you see how gently the pilot puts it on the ground. As you can see, the tires don't really even want to go down on the ground because the plane still wants to fly because it's going really fast. Now, this is something that pilots train for in the simulator, but it's very rare because there's usually, on most planes, 2 different ways or more to accomplish the exact same thing. So to have 2 different systems fail that don't allow you to get something done is very rare. And that's why the planes have so many different redundant systems, is because they know a machine can fail, but you're typically not going to have on one flight 2 different things fail that impact that exact same thing, which is what happened here. You have a situation where the plane has no flaps, so now they're having to fly extremely fast. So like I said, they're flying a lot faster than they normally would, and that brings up another concern that you will have when you're flying larger aircraft like this, and that is the tires on these aircraft. They're only rated to go up to a certain speed. And on the Airbus, I had to look it up to find this because I had no idea what it was. It says here online 204 knots. Now, I've never flown the A340, so I don't know for sure, but here would be my guess. I would guess the plane probably lands around average 140 knots. That would be like a normal speed that it would land at. So in this case, they're probably somewhere around 180, something like that. And then this top speed that the tires can go, or the top speed that they're rated to go, is 204 knots. So you can see there's a 20 knot buffer, which allows for it on a windy day or things like that. But that doesn't mean that if it goes 205, the tire explodes. But you see how gently the pilot is setting the plane down here, and that is to not give the tires any undue stress. That's because you're not going to want to have those tires going extremely fast at kind of their limit and then pounding them into the ground. Now, that doesn't mean that if the tires were to go 205, they would explode, like I said, but it's just what it's been rated to handle. These planes have huge safety margins. Now, how concerned would I be as a passenger on this plane when I see that the flaps haven't gone out? Because I'm guessing they made some level of an announcement. I'm sure the scared flyers were freaking out. So if I'm a passenger on a plane and I were to see this, and I'm going to rate it from 1 to 10, 1 being a totally normal landing and 10 being I've seen Tom Hanks on my plane, because Tom Hanks in planes, obviously statistically not looking really good for him. But if that is 1 to 10, this is probably a 2. And the only reason being is because, one, the plane is going to have to be flying outside of the normal things that it is normally doing, and so they're going to be flying faster, so they're going to eat up a lot more runway. They're going to have to do some things that are abnormal, and anytime you have something that's abnormal, there's a higher risk. But on a 1 to 10, this is probably a 2 for me. It wouldn't bother me or concern me or worry me at all, because the safety margins, like I said, on airplanes are really big. They have very long runways, so they're going to go pick an airport with an extremely long runway, and you can see the pilot made a great job landing this and making it very smooth for everybody on the plane, and I'm sure they had plenty of stopping distance to stop in time. Not a big deal. But that is something that can happen. You just don't normally ever see it happen because, like I said, there's multiple ways to accomplish that same feat. So much happening there in the final few seconds. Okay, so here's what I want you to know, boys and girls. If you're in flight school and you've had a hard landing, realize that unless your landing gear has completely collapsed, causing you to have to eject from your plane, you're having a better day than this guy. There's obviously some delay on the sound, but listen here as the pilot starts to add power right before impact. I'm 100% sure that this pilot would want to redo this landing, because no matter what, even if you can say, okay, there was a wind shear, or he didn't expect this, or something changed, there's another problem. He had the nose pitched up way too high. You can see here the nose of the plane is pitched up so much right before touchdown that even if the pilot had the proper speed and power setting, this tail section is going to get destroyed regardless. Most of you know I was never a military pilot. I never got to fly cool aircraft like this, but I did fly with PJ, and PJ was a military instructor pilot on a lot of different aircraft, and so flying with him, as you know, I learned a lot of different things. He told me a lot of stories over his, 50 years of flying military, civilian, commercial airliner. He flew like everything. And the one thing he said to me, I was a relatively new pilot. I only think I had a couple of years of flying when I was flying with him. He had said, just realize every plane is the same. You want to get the rubber side down before the metal stuff, but they all have the same basic mechanics. And so he made it just, everything was simple to him because you have thousands of hours of flying lots of different planes, so it gets easier after you have thousands of hours doing anything, right? So he's just basically saying, don't treat like this is some space shuttle. It's a basic plane. It has the same basic things. And one of those things is you have to have the power in and have the appropriate speed if you're going to want to make a good landing. Because if your plane is sinking like this and then you think to add power, it's already too late. At the end of the day, every pilot makes mistakes. Some mistakes are bigger than others. This pilot hopefully will get another opportunity to be flying planes, or this could be the end of their career, depending on what the circumstances were that led up to this situation. Hopefully they get to fly again, because I would guess that's probably never a mistake that they're going to make again. And really, they were able to eject, which was the smart move. When your flames are coming up around the plane, there's nothing else you can really do at that point. It's already on the ground. You're not doing a go-around. With the flames coming around the flight deck there, the cockpit of that plane, you know, well, there's nothing I can do here. My job is done. And by ejecting, this is my opinion, it really makes life easier for the firefighters. There's only one pilot in there. They're not there. They've ejected. So if that plane burned or whatever, the firefighters aren't risking their life to try to get you out. So I think he really did the right thing. If you enjoyed this video, check out this one over here. I look forward to hearing from you. Until then, keep the blue side up.